Hello and good evening. Welcome to another writing vlog. Tonight I'm going to show you my evening writing routine. I write at night all the time and I talk about how much I love writing at night, but I never really go into detail about what I do and why I do it. And I thought it would be fun to take you along with me in the evening while I write. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie and I am writing my very first book, which I am calling Project Lily. It's 7 p.m., which means it's time for me to start my evening writing sprint. I usually start right after dinner, after I've eaten, cleaned up the kitchen, done all the dishes, etc. I put everything away. I make sure I don't have anything left to do for the day. So that way I can fully concentrate on my book for the rest of the evening. And as you saw, the first thing I always do is set up my atmosphere. I really love writing in a cozy atmosphere and just getting this whole mood going while I'm writing. It makes it a lot more fun, and I also find that it helps me focus better. I've dimmed all the lights, I have small lights on, I put my YouTube ambiance on, and a fun fact is a lot of times I put on YouTube ambiance that matches the scene that I'm writing. So if I'm writing a scene in a library, I'll put on a library ambiance. If I'm writing a scene in, I don't know, a garden, I put on some garden ambiance. It's just a really great way for me to get into the headspace of the scene that I'm writing. And I love writing at night because I have 3 to 4 hours at my disposal. It's 7 p.m. right now, and I usually stop writing somewhere between 10 and 11 p.m. It kind of depends on how I feel when I get there, which I will discuss later tonight. Now that I've got my atmosphere all set up for the night, it's time to start writing. But before I start writing, there are a few things that I do on my computer to prepare myself to write. I'm not going to show these in a lot of detail in my B-roll clips just because I can't. Like, everything is typed out on Word documents and Excel sheets, and I can't physically show you the contents. So I'm going to talk about them first, and then we can move into the rest of my writing routine. I have 4 documents open on my computer at all times when I'm writing, and that's the first thing I do when I sit down to write is I open up all these documents. The first one is obviously my manuscript. The next thing I open is my chapter by chapter outline. I review this before every chapter I write. It really helps me to review it and keep it in the back of my head while I'm writing the chapter. I will also open up my word count calculator. I don't use that in the beginning, but I use it throughout the evening, so it's really nice to have handy. And then the last document is what I call my names document, and that is a list of the names for people, places, and things that I have come up with throughout the story. I do reference this quite a lot because sometimes I'll bring up a character and I might have forgotten what I named them, or I can't remember how I spelled a name. That happens quite a bit. So I have that handy as well for when I'm writing. So once those documents are open, I'm ready to write. So I'm gonna go open up those documents now and start my evening writing session. I just finished with break number 1. It's currently around 8:30. So what I typically do is I write for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then I take a 10 to 15 minute break. Around an hour is where I start to get antsy and I feel like I need to get up. And that's exactly what I do when I take a break. I get up, I walk around a little bit. I just do some random things just to get my mind off writing and to stretch my legs and get off the couch. I decided to do some additional stretching tonight just to get some extra movement, and then I did a few more random things, and now I'm ready to start writing again. And I will write for another 45 minutes to an hour. My writing is going really well tonight. I don't think I mentioned it, but I'm on draft 3 and I'm currently on chapter 20. I have been booking it through these last few chapters, and I'm probably about a quarter of the way into chapter 20, and this is one of those chapters where it might turn into a second chapter because I have a lot of stuff planned, but it is a really interesting chapter and I'm really excited to write it. And I do find that when I'm excited to write things, I write more quickly. I'm gonna go ahead and get back to it. I don't want to chat a bunch and lose out on some writing time tonight. I'll talk to you in a little bit. All right, I just made my popcorn and this break is gonna be a little bit longer than 10 to 15 minutes simply because of the time it took to make this popcorn. I prefer to have an evening snack sometime between 9 and 10. And so whenever my break happens to be, that's when I have my snack. So that's this break. And what I usually do is I will snack on my snack while I keep writing just to save time. I do want to say I'm having a great time writing this scene. I was literally sitting on the couch laughing this whole time. And I love when I'm writing and I'm having a great time doing it. There is this really interesting kind of dynamic between two characters. And when I originally kind of plotted this book out and thought up all the characters and how they'd interact with each other, these characters actually this entire time were very neutral to each other. They didn't like each other and they didn't hate each other either. And for some reason, every time these two characters get in the same room, they start massively verbally attacking each other. And this has made for some of the best scenes that I have in my entire book. I love it. The dialogue is great. And these characters, just the way they attack each other is great. Before I started writing, people always say characters get on the page and they do their own thing. And I never understood that because I was like, if it's in your head, why are they doing their own thing? Like you thought of it, so they're not really doing their own thing. And this is the definition of characters doing their own thing. And it just happens. And then the dialogue just comes out and you didn't even plan it. It's so hard to explain. But anyway, so that's the relationship between these two characters. And I just wrote a scene with that. Absolutely loved it. And now I'm just gonna be starting on the scene after that. And this will be the last writing session of the evening. I don't yet know when I will stop. I do have a few different things that I evaluate before I stop. The first is, am I physically tired? Since it's later in the evening, of course I'm gonna get tired and want to go to sleep. So a lot of times, either if I'm coming up on the end of a scene or a chapter, or if I just feel it as I'm writing, if I'm starting to feel tired, that's when I get ready to stop. The other thing is, do I have to get up early in the morning? If I have to get up early in the morning, I am not gonna stay up till like 11 o'clock at night. And then the next thing is, am I coming to the end of a chapter or scene? I personally love to finish on a chapter or a scene. I like this because I can get basically everything that's in my head out before I go to bed. While I'm writing, I kind of have bits and pieces of the entire scene or chapter in my head, and slowly I'm like working through all of them as I move along the chapter or scene. And if I stop mid-chapter or scene, kind of two things happen. First of all, it interrupts my flow. When I'm writing a chapter or a scene, if I just stop and then I try and pick it back up later, it doesn't work as well as writing through the whole chapter or scene. Second of all, if I don't finish it, then I walk out of this living room and I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about, okay, so the next thing that this person says is this, and then this happens. And it's just something that I don't have to think about on my way to bed. Those are the three things I'm thinking about as I move into my very last writing sprint. Obviously, I'm gonna focus on the writing, but I kind of pay attention to all these things in the background. I already know I don't have to wake up early tomorrow, so I don't have to worry about that. Chances are I am not finishing a chapter just based on where I am, but I could finish a scene depending on how long this scene I'm about to write is. I don't know if I can finish the scene in an hour or not, and then we'll see how tired I get. All right, time to enjoy my popcorn and start writing again. I'm done writing for the evening, but I am not done with my writing routine yet. So let's finish it up. I finished writing my story, but I still have 2 2 things left to do. One thing that I'm not doing tonight that I do, it's only when I end a chapter, and I haven't ended a chapter tonight, but anytime I end a chapter, I look at my chapter by chapter outline and I update it with what I wrote in that chapter. I always make sure my chapter by chapter outline is current before I move on to the next chapter. But I am ending in the middle of a scene, which I know I said I wasn't going to do, but the scene I started is actually a very, very long scene, and there was just no way I was going to finish it tonight or even really get to a good stopping place. That happens sometimes, and I'm just gonna have to deal with that tonight and tomorrow. But I was getting tired, and I just know that I need to stop. Like, that's one of the good things about writing at night, is you just kind of get to the point where you know you need to stop. So the next thing I do, which is the thing probably I look forward to the most at the end of my writing session, is updating my word counts. So I will pull up my word count calculator, and I will calculate out how many words I wrote for the day. So let me grab my word count from Word and put it in my Excel word count calculator. Today, not just tonight, but today, I wrote 3,145 words. That's really, really good. I'm really proud of myself. Unfortunately, I forgot to check my word count before I started my evening writing sprint. So I can't tell you how many words I wrote this evening, but 3,000 in one day is pretty darn good. And my total word count for my novel is 48,670. So I am almost halfway done with draft 3 of my novel. I love checking my word counts at the end of the day because it really gives me such motivation and inspiration when I see these word counts climb. Of course, I always track word counts on a daily basis just for my own personal information. I can see how productive I'm being over the course of a day, a week, a month, over an entire draft. This has been super helpful, especially as I move forward. I can now kind of estimate how long it's going to take me to do something. Obviously, when I was writing draft 1 of Project Lily, I had no clue how long it would take because I didn't know my writing speed and I didn't know how much I would write with my schedule. And now that I'm in my 3rd draft, I really understand that really well. I know how many words I can write when I sit down. Now that I'm doing a lot of heavy editing in draft 3, I understand how many words I go through in editing versus how many words I go through in writing. It's just super helpful when planning. For example, I know when I do draft 4, it's going to be similar to draft 3, and it's going to take me about maybe as long depending on how I approach draft 4. And then I know if I start a new book and I'm on draft 1 of a new book, it's going to be very similar to drafts 1 and 2 of Project Lily. I'm really glad. I have been tracking word counts since day 1. And again, it's just a little routine that I've built in at the end of the night. And it helps give me a lot of information that I use in my writing practice. All right, well, that's the end of my writing routine. I am tired and it's time for bed. So I will see you in the next writing vlog.